Moments ago, an unprecedented event unfolded in a London courtroom. The sitting Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, was dramatically arrested in full view of the nation. Cameras captured every second of what has now become one of the most shocking moments in modern British political history. This is News or UK, and what happened just 1 hour ago has sent shockwaves through Westminster and beyond. If you're watching this, stay tuned, because this story is far from over, and the next 24 hours could reshape Britain's political landscape forever. According to verified reports, Prime Minister and Labour Party leader Keir Starmer was taken into custody directly from the courtroom. Not from Downing Street, not from his home, but right in front of journalists, lawyers, and stunned observers. The arrest happened live, on camera. Witnesses described the scene as sudden and precise. One moment, Starmer stood calmly before the judge. The next, officers moved in swiftly. Within seconds, he was surrounded, handcuffed, and escorted out through a side exit as security cleared the courtroom. The images were broadcast worldwide within minutes. Outside the courthouse, chaos erupted almost instantly. Reporters rushed toward the exits, microphones raised, while bystanders shouted and filmed the unfolding scene on their phones. Some onlookers cheered, believing justice had finally caught up to power. Others stood frozen in disbelief, horrified by what they were witnessing. A sitting British Prime Minister being led away in handcuffs. Within minutes, the footage was everywhere. Major news outlets, BBC, Sky News, CNN International, and dozens more broke into live coverage. Social media platforms lit up like wildfire. On X, formerly Twitter, the hashtag Starmer arrested hit #1 worldwide in under 10 minutes. The flood of traffic was so intense that the platform briefly crashed. TikTok and Instagram reels filled with clips replaying the arrest from every possible angle. It wasn't just a trending topic, it was the only story on the internet. But amid all the noise, one question dominated the conversation. Why? Law enforcement officials released only a short statement, confirming that the arrest was lawful and that further details would be shared in due course. No charges were announced, no explanation was provided. That silence only fueled speculation, creating a vacuum where rumors multiplied faster than facts. In the absence of answers, the uncertainty spiraled. Was this about corruption, abuse of power, political retaliation? Nobody knew for sure, and in that information void, the nation's anxiety deepened. What began as a single shocking event was quickly turning into a full-blown national crisis. To understand how Britain reached this breaking point, we have to step back. For weeks, mounting pressure had been closing in on Starmer. While official details remained tightly sealed, whispers in Westminster hinted at a series of confidential investigations. Behind closed doors, prosecutors were reportedly reviewing evidence connected to possible procedural misconduct and potential abuse of authority within his administration. Sources described sealed documents, confidential filings, and legal meetings that had stretched late into the night. Yet, none of this information was ever made public. And that silence bred deep suspicion. Every rumor, every unverified leak only added to the growing sense that something explosive was coming. The irony of this moment cannot be ignored. Before stepping into politics, Keir Starmer built his career on law and order. As Director of Public Prosecutions from 2008 to 2013, he was known for being uncompromising, the man who held others accountable under the law. He built his public image as a champion of justice, promising to restore trust in government when he became Labour leader and later Prime Minister. Now, the very man who once prosecuted criminals stands on the other side of the law. For his supporters, it feels like an unimaginable fall from grace. For his critics, it's poetic justice. Either way, the symbolism is impossible to ignore. the enforcer of justice now caught in its grip. Even before this shocking arrest, Starmer's government was already showing deep cracks. The economy was fragile, inflation remained stubbornly high, and millions of families were struggling to afford essentials like heating and groceries. Promises of a fairer Britain had faded into frustration. Approval ratings for the Prime Minister had been sliding for months, with growing numbers of voters saying they felt misled and disappointed. Inside Parliament, the atmosphere had turned increasingly tense. Opposition leaders sensed weakness and attacked relentlessly, tearing into Labour's policies during every session. Starmer's allies, once confident and vocal, had become visibly uneasy. Their optimism was replaced by nervous silence, and behind closed doors, party divisions were widening. So when Starmer entered that courtroom today, his political standing was already fragile. His opponents were eager for a collapse. His allies were on edge. The British public, meanwhile, was watching closely, uncertain whether their Prime Minister could survive another scandal. But when the news broke that he'd been arrested in real time, those simmering tensions exploded into chaos. Inside Westminster, panic spread immediately. Some Labour MPs shouted that this was a political assassination, a setup orchestrated to destroy the party from within. Others stayed quiet, carefully gauging the direction of public opinion before deciding whether to stand by him or walk away. Across the aisle, Conservative MPs seized the moment, calling for Starmer's immediate resignation and demanding an emergency parliamentary debate. The Speaker struggled to maintain order as the chamber descended into angry shouting and accusations. Within minutes of the arrest, the media landscape erupted into overdrive. Every major network interrupted regular programming, cutting straight to live updates. News anchors scrambled for details. Analysts filled screens with speculation, and political commentators tried to make sense of the chaos. The airwaves were flooded with one burning question. Was this the end of Keir Starmer's leadership, or the beginning of something even bigger? Experts debated relentlessly. Could Labour survive a political earthquake of this scale? Who would take over if Starmer was forced to resign? Would Britain be pushed into a snap election? Nobody had clear answers, but that didn't stop the endless stream of theories. Every hour brought a new headline, a new rumor, a new wave of uncertainty. Outside the courthouse, tensions reached boiling point. Hundreds of protesters poured into the streets, their voices clashing in a chaotic mix of anger and defiance. On one side, supporters held signs reading, "Defend democracy" and "Political persecution must end." They accused the justice system of being weaponized against an elected leader. On the other, opponents carried banners declaring, "No one is above the law and justice at last." They cheered each time footage of the arrest replayed on nearby screens. Police quickly formed barriers between the two sides as chants grew louder. Riot officers stood ready, their presence a stark reminder of how volatile the situation had become. The energy was electric, unpredictable, one spark away from chaos. Meanwhile, online, the divide only deepened. Millions of posts appeared within the first hour. On X alone, over 5 million tweets were recorded about the arrest. Facebook groups dedicated to UK politics crashed from heavy traffic. Conspiracy theories, misinformation, and legitimate news updates collided in a storm of confusion. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds as Britain's divisions, already wide, split even further apart. Across the world, the arrest of Britain's Prime Minister sent shockwaves through political and diplomatic circles. International headlines dominated the airwaves, from the New York Times to Le Monde, Al Jazeera, and NHK Japan, all interrupting their regular coverage to report on the extraordinary scenes unfolding in London. For many global audiences, it was almost unthinkable. A British leader, once seen as the symbol of stability, being taken away in handcuffs. In Washington, the White House issued a brief but cautious statement, saying it was closely monitoring the situation while declining to comment further. The European Union emphasized the importance of upholding the rule of law, while France and Germany expressed concern over political stability in the United Kingdom. Behind closed doors, diplomatic sources described a wave of unease. Britain, a cornerstone of Western democracy and a key NATO member, suddenly looked unstable. According to insiders, NATO officials began quiet discussions about potential contingency plans in case the UK government collapsed or became unable to function effectively. In financial markets, the pound dipped slightly against the dollar as investors braced for political turmoil. Analysts warned that if the situation escalated, it could trigger deeper economic uncertainty across Europe. Meanwhile, Britain's geopolitical rivals wasted no time capitalizing on the chaos. Russia's state media gleefully broadcast the footage, framing it as proof of Western hypocrisy. Chinese networks portrayed the crisis as evidence of instability within Western democracies. Across the world, propaganda outlets used the event to question the credibility of Britain's leadership. Political scholars called it one of the most significant moments in UK history, a democratic system tested before the eyes of the world. Many warned that unless clarity emerged soon, the credibility of Britain's institutions could face lasting damage. What was once seen as unshakable, British order, British stability, now looked uncertain, fragile, and dangerously exposed. As global attention intensified, the mystery only deepened. Despite the unprecedented nature of the arrest, authorities still had not revealed the formal charges against Prime Minister Starmer. Legal experts called this highly irregular, especially for a case of such enormous public importance. Typically, charges are announced immediately to maintain transparency and prevent speculation. The fact that none had been disclosed suggested something far more complex unfolding behind the scenes. According to sources close to the investigation, sealed court documents do exist, multiple filings that remain confidential for legal reasons. Over the past 3 days, emergency meetings reportedly took place between government legal advisors and senior prosecutors. Late-night sessions stretched into the early hours, with key officials attempting to manage what was clearly a fast-moving legal storm. Those within Starmer's circle said the pace of events took even his closest advisors by complete surprise. They had anticipated possible legal scrutiny, perhaps even a summons, but not a full arrest, not handcuffs, not the image of Britain's Prime Minister being led away before the nation's cameras. One insider described it as a political earthquake, not a scandal you prepare for, but one that swallows you whole. This wasn't a slow-building controversy. It was a sudden eruption, a spark that turned into a wildfire within an hour. And as new details continued to remain hidden from public view, the lack of transparency only fueled more speculation. Some analysts believe the investigation related to decisions Starmer made during his premiership. Others suggested it could trace back to his time as Director of Public Prosecutions, when he handled some of the UK's most sensitive legal cases. For now, everything remained uncertain. Except one thing, this was no ordinary political drama. It had become a constitutional crisis.